Do you love TV shows? We do too. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and we're the hosts of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're searching for a new favorite series or ready to revisit an old classic, we're here to guide you through an infinite world of TV shows.
Each episode, we watch and discuss the pilot for shows while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storyline.
So if you're tired of endlessly scrolling and not sure what to watch next, tune in and let us do the searching for you.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our pod.
Hello, how's it going?
I was just literally right before I hit record, I was just talking about we're recording this on the first Friday of Lent, and for those of you who don't know, I work in a seafood restaurant, or a restaurant that's mostly known for fried seafood, and it is nothing but fried catfish and shrimp po' boys. That's all we made all night.
Yep.
And I was just saying, I was like, we live in a Catholic state, and I'm constantly reminded every year.
Fried Fish Friday during Lent. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And another little fun milestone is, it's not a normal milestone, but it's our 80th episode.
80th.
That's not like a huge milestone, but
I think that's huge.
We forgot to talk about our 75th episode, so
Yes.
Anna is going to start keeping track of these episodes, not like 85, 90, 95, 100, but like the big
one.
like the big
80,
ones.
90, 100. I think that the
I'm
tens are important.
Right. I'm really going to be interested to see, because our 100th episode is going to fall in May. So that's going to be a fun month, because
our theme.
It's going to be interesting to pick the show that's going to be our 100th episode. But today we are continuing March with TV shows that are named after U.S. cities, U.S. destinations, and we are doing a show that I've been wanting to do since we started the podcast. This is hands down. I know I say this is my favorite all the time. I'm one of those people. Everything's my favorite. I'm passionate about all of my TV shows, but I can actually say this is one of my all-time favorite shows.
It's probably up there in mine of a recent show that I started watching that you got me to watch. Yeah. And there's like a series of episodes that lull me to sleep because they're like my comfort.
Yeah.
So,
So we are talking about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a show that was on for a lot longer than I realized when I looked at how many seasons there were. And we got a lot to talk about. We got some fun stuff to talk about, so we're gonna just go ahead and jump right into it. Anna's gonna give us some episode and series information.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the pilot. Brooklyn Nine-Nine was an American police procedural sitcom that originally aired on Fox from September 17th, 2013 to May 20th, 2018 for 5 seasons until it was canceled, but then it was immediately picked up by NBC for 3 more seasons. The series finale aired on September 16th, 2021 after 8 seasons and 158 episodes.
Yeah, I remember when that happened and it got canceled.
Oh, yeah,
and everyone was just, irate. And then, immediately, it was like the same day or the day after NBC picked it up.
We were together and watching it by then,
Yeah.
The series was created by Dan Goor and Michael Schur. Goor had previously been on the writing staff of Parks and Rec, but also wrote for The Daily Show and Late Night with Conan O'Brien. Schur is one of the most well-known TV creators of the 21st century, creating other shows such as Parks and Rec, The Good Place, Rutherford Falls, and A Man on the Inside. He also served as a producer for The Office, Master of None, and currently for Hacks. Despite all of this, he is probably best known for playing Dwight's eccentric cousin Mo Schrute on The Office. The pilot was written by Goor and Schur and was directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, best known for directing 21 and 22 Jump Street, as well as the animated Spider-Verse films, which got them an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. Brooklyn Nine-Nine centers around the fictitious 99th Precinct in Brooklyn, New York. The series follows a team of detectives headed by the newly appointed Captain Raymond Holt. The cast of characters includes Andy Samberg as Jake Peralta, a highly skilled but often immature detective. Stephanie Beatrice as Rosa Diaz, a tough and intimidating detective. Terry Crews as Terry Jeffords, the gentle giant sergeant. Melissa Fumero as Amy Santiago, a highly intelligent and neurotic detective that often competes with Jake on who is the better detective. My fave, Joe Latrulio as Charles Boyle, Jake's best friend and hardworking detective who often overshares his personal life with his coworkers.
There's no other way to describe Boyle.
I love him. Chelsea Peretti, also my fave.
Oh, yeah, she's
as
the best.
Gina Linetti, Captain Holt's eccentric and overly confident assistant and Jake's childhood friend. Andre Brower, R.I.P.
I know.
as Captain Raymond Holt, the precinct's newly appointed captain, best known for his stoic and deadpan demeanor. And Dirk Blocker and Joel McKinnon Miller as Hitchcock and Scully. Two accident-prone detectives who are often given piles of paperwork so they don't have to go out into the field. Despite early skepticism of a funny cop show being played out, Brooklyn Nine-Nine surprised everyone with its winning cast, lovable characters, wacky gags, and lighthearted humor. It became an instant hit and even won 2 Golden Globes during its first season for Best Comedy Series and Best Lead Actor for Andy Samberg. The series remains as one of the best comedies of the 21st century, and you can currently watch the entire series on Peacock, as well as the first 5 seasons on Netflix.
So when I first heard about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, this was just a random memory that popped in my head, and it fits with the last paragraph with the skepticism of a funny cop show being played out.
Yeah.
So there was on Comedy Central there was the roast of James Franco, and it was, it was like maybe a few months before Brooklyn Nine-Nine aired, because they were talking about, because Andy Samberg was one of the roasters. So the roast of James Franco was super random because it was James Franco who, no offense to people who get roasted on Comedy Central, James Franco was still a very current, very popular actor at the time.
Yeah.
And all of the people that were roasting him, it was like Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill, Nick Kroll, Aziz Ansari. It's incredible. It's the only Comedy Central roast that I like, because it's, no offense to the other roasts on Comedy Central, it was actually funny. And Aziz Ansari was one of them. Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, Sarah Silverman, Natasha Leggero. It was like a star-studded roasting. It was incredible.
Okay.
And so the whole time, this is when Brooklyn Nine-Nine was first came out, and this was only maybe a year after Andy Samberg left SNL. So everyone was what everyone was roasting Andy about was pretty much oh, you left SNL, tried to be in movies, and now you're going back to TV. And they kept making jokes that so after the show gets canceled after 5 episodes, and everyone was making jokes that it's another funny cop show, this isn't gonna, you're not doing anything new, and they were really making fun of him hard. And then literally the next year he wins a Golden Globe, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine wins Best Comedy Series.
Yeah.
So everyone, including myself, everyone was blown away by Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and how just even the pilot, immediately funny it is.
Oh, yeah.
And how every character, a Jake, an Amy. You may not know a Rosa. She's kind of her own thing.
Oh, I love Rosa.
Or maybe you don't know a Gina Linetti, but we all know a Boyle. We've all worked with the Holt. We all kind of. It was just immediately funny and immediately just a very likable show. And I was really happy that you liked it when I showed it to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, any sort of connection by that point that there was to The Office, Michael Schur. I knew of Michael Schur even before The Office, because I was a Kathy Lee and Regis fan, and Regis's daughter is married to Michael Schur. So I knew that name a long time ago.
Yeah.
A while ago. And so when you were oh yeah, this is also a Michael Schur thing.
Yeah.
And, he had also done Parks and Rec. And I mean, I have loved SNL since the day it was born. So, anything with Andy Samberg, I knew I would love as well. So,
same.
Yeah.
It's really funny that that the characters of Gina and Jake, they're childhood friends, and it's really funny because Andy Samberg and Chelsea Peretti have known each other since they were kids.
Yes,
and their
that
parents,
picture you showed me of them on vacation is so cute.
So their parents they both grew up in the Bay Area. I don't know exactly where. I think they both grew up in Berkeley, and and their parents were friends. And if you ever want to go and look, you just type in their names and type in like childhood photo or something like that, and they're in a station wagon, and Andy is in the way back, and Chelsea's kind of like looking at the camera like behind him, and it's a really cute photo.
It's really cute.
And they look exactly the same.
They like Chelsea Peretti looks just like a little Chelsea Peretti
in that face she makes.
Yes,
everyone's
those
very
eyes,
familiar with
yes.
it. And I also loved, and I didn't realize this until we watched the pilot, is that Stephanie that Rosa didn't have a Rosa voice yet. It was Stephanie. I can hear Mirabelle. I can hear her when she would talk.
Oh, my little Encanto.
Because
yes.
she was doing a deeper voice, but it was still like her voice. You could still hear her, and she would say certain words. I'm like, oh, I hear Mirabelle.
Yeah.
Which Encanto's one of our favorite Disney movies. I think we saw it twice in theaters, and then the day it came out on Disney Plus, I think it was on Christmas, and we were like, I think we were doing something. We're like, we're going home and watching Encanto. I mean, there's no other option.
There's no other question.
And anytime, like, I think when the littles came over, we're trying to decide on a movie to watch. I think we were like, what about Encanto? And everyone agreed on Encanto.
It was hilarious upstairs. I mean, they were not,
because we were varied ages.
Yes, because it's hard with Kennedy sometimes because she's the littlest of the littles. Well, minus Wes's kids, but they weren't there. But we try to be sensitive to Kennedy, and it's hard when you have like the ones that are seniors in high school, and then you have one in elementary school. But we said Encanto, and all of them were like, yes, so it was, that to me was just super cute.
It was. Yeah. So what are so Boyle and Gina are your favorite characters? I know you love everybody, but you think Boyle's probably your favorite?
Boyle's probably my favorite. I just love him. He's so sweet, and he just always means well, and he's just the cutest with, Nikolai and
was it Nicolaj?
Nicolaj, yes,
Nicolaj.
Nicolaj. And then I love Gina. I just think she's hilarious, and I love them all. I mean, even Hitchcock and Scully, they're all just so silly and fun, and I love the dynamic between Andy Samberg and Melissa Fumero their relationship develops.
It's another A and J.
Exactly, and like we have our A and J characters that we love, so another Amy and Jake.
Yep.
So, yeah, I love them all. Well, who is your favorite?
I mean, I think for the most part, I love Boyle, obviously. I love Joe Latrulio. I think that's kind of the big thing ever since like Reno 911 and all of the stuff with David Wayne. He's in a lot of that stuff, and he's just like Wet Hot American Summer. That's what I was trying to remember. Wet Hot American Summer. He's just one of those people that like, and it's the same with Andy Samberg, just one of those people that are just like effortlessly funny. Like it's like they're not even, it's like they're just talking. They're not even like trying to be funny. But I think the character that I just loved, and I just loved the dynamic, because he just had a fun dynamic with everybody. Andy Samberg just cracks me up. I just love Andy Samberg so much, and he's so funny. And there is a level of, I relate to Jake to some degree, because I'm not as silly as he is, but I think I'm somewhere around there. I'm good what I'm good at, but I don't take stuff that seriously. And I always kind of like relate to that character, because that's how I am. I take my work seriously, but not that seriously. I take our relationship seriously, and then that's kind of it. I mean, like, life is just too short to be serious all the time. It's nice to have fun. So what do you have, like, a favorite? I mean, I know this answer, but like, do you have a favorite episode?
any that involves Cheddar,
Oh my god.
the corgi.
Oh yeah, Captain
captain's-
Holt's dog.
Yes, so anyone that involves Cheddar.
Specifically the episode Cheddar.
Yeah, specifically that episode. And then, of course, Mumps.
Oh yeah.
Is my
Was it
absolute...
9 Days? 9 Days is the name of the episode.
Oh,
yeah.
is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, when Jake and Captain Holt get the mumps and
Oh, you love
yeah, I mean,
remember the first time.
Balthazar.
I remember the first time you watched that episode. It was like the first time you watched Fire Drill on The Office, where you were like, rewind it. Like,
No, I just when they started talking about like there was mumps going around, and I mean I've seen pictures of people with mumps
with
and
the goiters, yeah.
yeah, with the big neck goiter things, and I just was like, are they gonna do that? And then like flash to the next scene, they are both like their necks are thick as
Yeah.
their heads, and I mean he was like, this is Balthazar,
She's a thirsty bitch.
she's a thirsty bitch. And, I mean, I just love the whole when Amy is trying to help them actually solve the investigation, and she makes them the pasta with the recipe,
Right.
and they're like, "Bleh," it's just
10 cups of sugar.
10 cups of sugar. What are you doing? And so I love that episode. It's so cute.
It
and,
is.
I just love, I'm trying to think of I'm bad with the names of these episodes.
Right.
I just kind of know
Yeah.
what happens.
You can kind of tell me. I'll probably know the name. Possibly know the name of the episode.
I don't know. Was it the same one where, they're, when Gina is like, no one actually taught me how to dance, but when she does like her little, I can't think of what
I know what you're
episode
talking
it
about.
is,
Yeah.
but-
Oh, Gina has some of my favorite lines
yes.
of the show. I think one of my favorites, and one that I used to say all the time, she was like, I'm good at everything except for being, I'm good at everything except for being modest. I'm not good at being modest. I'm great at being modest, or something like that. It was like something like that. The only thing I'm not good at is being humble, which I'm great at. That's what it was.
Yeah. The episode when Joe Latrulio's Boyle's dog dies and Rosa doesn't understand.
That's such a good episode.
And she's being mean to him, which we did not like.
Yes.
Because she was just not understanding, and she was like, you need to work and come on, work on the case or whatever she was mad at him about. And then at the end, she finally understood, and they had like the little service for him.
Yes.
And I was just like, so like Rosa does have like a little bit of a heart in there.
So speaking of Rosa, one of my favorite, and it's during the Cheddar 9 Days, is when she was in the relationship with Pimento.
I was gonna bring up Pimento.
Yeah.
Anything with him too. When they're like all like
Yes.
in each other's face, like
that's too
do
many.
me.
Yeah, when he's like about to put the stack of papers in the hole punch, he's like, "It's too many papers." He's like, "No, it's not," and he like slams it really hard. And then but for some reason, every time they're doing their like crazy flirting, Terry's always there for some reason.
Yeah.
He's like, "What the hell? Like,
what the hell?
Can I just get some coffee?" Like,
Yeah. So it's so hard with this show because it's like a lot of like kind of pieces of
Definitely.
like episodes, but they're all just so good.
I mean, but you have to, if you're going to talk about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you got to talk about how great the Halloween heist episodes were, where they played their little games on Halloween.
Yes, yes.
And then that led to a very, very sweet episode, which if you've never seen the show, I won't spoil. We're giving very basic summaries. We're not spoiling anything for the show. We're just talking about moments in episodes, but there's a Halloween heist episode later in the series that ends up being like really sweet at the end. And it's just really, I love just the dynamic between, I mean, like workplace comedies, you would think by Brooklyn Nine-Nine it was worn out because it was such a thing for such a long time, especially in the 2000s leading up to 2013, but God, they just like knocked it out of the park. It's just one of those shows that from beginning to end, it never slowed down. It never stopped being funny. I mean, even shows that I love, there are certain lulls in the series where I'm like, yeah, we can skip that season, or we can skip those episodes. But Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I can watch it from beginning to end.
Oh yeah,
it's like that, Superstore, and The Office are like the only shows where I'm just like, I can watch it from beginning to end and never skip an episode. And there's a lot of episodes on all of those shows.
Yes.
All right, so we talked. Yeah, I could talk about Brooklyn Nine-Nine all day, but how much I love it all day. But we could talk about other things. So we've possibly talked about this before. I don't know if we have, like, in great detail. So the whole first episode and a lot of the first part of the first season is everyone kind of adjusting and having a new captain, and Captain Holt kind of adjusting to being a commanding officer. And everyone kind of, like, figuring out, like, what their role is and what their dynamic is. Do you have any, like, memories of having any difficulty getting along with, like, a new boss?
Well, in my job, I've had so many bosses. It's for me, it's kind of not difficult because I don't technically work with my boss. My boss
Right.
is usually in a state several states away. But sometimes getting new bosses, when I worked retail at Maison Blanche, was difficult because, like, they would have come from another store where they did things a certain way and they wanted it done that way, but that
Yeah.
wasn't how it was technically done in the store that I worked at. And again, I'm up for, like, whatever makes you happy, I will do it. And then, so at a store like Maison Blanche, you obviously have your department managers, then you have, like, a store manager, and then you have, like, an overall general manager. And sometimes it was really what the store manager wanted the department manager to do. So I just remember one time we had a new manager and she wanted purses like a certain way and displayed a certain way. And the store manager came down because our department was right where the escalators were. And so you would come down the escalator and it was like purses. And so she was very particular about what customers would see coming down the escalator. And so I just remember her coming down the escalator and being like, what is this? And I'm like, the new manager wanted us to do it this way.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, it was like, I mean, what else were we supposed to say? And so that was a dynamic of having a new boss wanting things certain way, but having an old, like, current boss also wanting things a certain way. And I'm like, y'all
annoying.
need to, like, figure this out.
Yeah.
I'm the low peon on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Like, someone needs to tell me what to do and I will just do it. And I've kind of always been that way with bosses. I think I've talked a little bit about having bosses that were very misogynistic and, treated women poorly. And those were difficult times. But even when I was dealing with those managers, I just towed the line and took a lot of, I don't want to say abuse. I mean, that sounds extremely harsh. Maybe it was abuse, but I was never going to put myself in a position to lose my job.
Yeah.
I need my job.
Right.
And so I always felt like as long as I did a good job, karma would come. And a lot of times it did. So I have still been at my job. But I think you also asked about training someone else. So we have a lot of turnover in my kind of group that I work in with my company. And training someone new is always interesting. We've had a couple of new managers come that do what I do. And it's interesting. Obviously, I am in my mid 50s and a lot of our newer managers are in their maybe mid to late 20s, early 30s and have different work ethics, have different kind of generational qualms about them. And whereas I'm very customer service oriented and I try to answer issues and try to solve the problems myself and really work with the customers. Sometimes a lot of the newer generations are like, oh, just call customer support. Here's the number.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not what they wanted. They could have done that themselves before they messaged you. And so it's interesting sometimes in training a new person, like that's like the last resort. You're the first step. You should try to fix it first. And so it's learning those dynamics. And sometimes maybe I'm like, maybe I shouldn't spend so much time. Maybe I should send my customers to customer support, but I would never do that.
Right.
I care about my customers too much, and I have really good relationships with them. So, so training new people, new bosses, it's kind of go with the flow sometimes. But what about you? I know you have had probably a lot of bosses.
Yeah, so I've probably had some type of issue with a boss or a manager. I hate saying boss. I always say manager. A boss just feels like a word that shouldn't be used.
Right.
I hate the word. I don't know why. I prefer the word. I prefer to say manager, but it's the same thing. Supervisor, manager, boss, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
But working in the food service industry, yes, there's a lot of turnover for crew members. There's a lot of turnover for hourly managers. There's lots of turnover for everyone, salary managers, regional managers. Like there's just a high turnover depending on where you work at, what franchise you work for. It all just kind of depends. But one that always pops in my mind, it was my first real, I guess, corporate type job that wasn't like a mom and pop thing. It was when I worked at my junior and part of my senior year of high school. So when I first got there, that was my first like real job that I worked at, like for longer than like a month or two, because I worked at Jones Creek Cafe before that, and then I worked at the amusement park for 3 hours, and so I never really had. This was my first like real job that like I was committing to as like my not full time, but because I was 16, but like my job. And I really liked it. A lot of the majority of the people that worked there I went to school with, and so it was a lot of people my age that I went to school with that I knew that I was friends with, or they went to
neighborhood.
They either went to Woodlawn, to Terra, or one of the private schools that were in the area. Like anyway, so I got along with everyone. I got along with all the managers. The thing with that differs from, I mean, I guess Jack in the Box was the same. But wasn't like the other fast food place that I worked at, where I'm going to talk about that in a second, that there were what felt like a million managers. Like, it felt like there were, not literally, but like it felt like on any given shift, there would be like 20 people there. It felt like there was like 20 people there, and like 10 of them had manager shirts on. So it just never, and I didn't know, like, for a while, I didn't know like who was above who, and I didn't know, like, I knew the one guy was like the general manager, and that was it. I mean, like, and that was kind of it. And a lot of the like shift managers is what I'll call. I don't know what they were actually called, but shift managers is what I'll call them. They were like the hourly managers. It's like what I did at the fast food place where I was a manager at. A lot of them were 17, 18, 19 years old.
God.
Right. They were at least, I think they had to be at least 18. They were like 18, 19, 20 years old. They're in their late teens, early 20s. A lot of them like was like the only job they ever had. And they all kind of handled authority differently. You had the ones that kind of like the manager that I was, when I was the manager at the fast food place. Like, I was very kind of laid back, and I kind of just let everyone do their job. I am not now, nor have I ever been, a micromanager. I do not like being over people's shoulder. I really want people to think that I want people to know that like I have faith in them, and I have faith in their abilities, and that I trust them. And because when I don't, when I don't trust the people that I'm working with, it's very obvious, because I do have to be over their shoulder. But anyway, and so then you had the other ones that like you just knew like they couldn't wait to be a manager, because then they get to like tell people what to do. Like, they kind of had that mentality where it's like, oh, I'm the man now. Like, oh, I'm the boss now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and those were the ones that it was always men. It was always young boys that were 18, 19, 20 years old that got their button up. So then they think they're the shit, and that they can like puff their chest out and tell people what to do and bark orders. Because a lot of people think that being a manager is just standing around and barking orders at people, and it's not. That's not what a manager is. That's what an asshole is. And so it's just like, that does, if you're that type of manager, you're doing a shitty job. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you if you're listening to me right now. Find another strategy. Anyway, so there was this one manager. He was maybe too, and that was the other difficult thing, kind of what you said. It's difficult when you have managers and bosses that are like a lot younger than you, but it's even more annoying when you're a teenager and you have managers that are like a year older than you.
Oh, I bet.
And it's really annoying, especially if they're like whatever about it, it's fine, but like so there was this one guy, I'll say his name because I don't care. His name's AJ. I haven't seen or talked to him since I was 17, so I seriously doubt. If you're listening, that's really weird. But thanks for listening.
Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
Another A and J.
This isn't a fun story for him.
Okay.
So he was the guy that like, as soon as he started, because he had trained at another McDonald's and then started working at ours. So he kind of just came in as a manager, but this was his first time, like kind of like what I did at my place. And so he came in immediately, was like, kind of micromanaging, kind of barking at us, kind of just standing. He was just being an asshole all the time. And so I was a minor. There was one shift where I'm still a minor. I have to take breaks. We can only work a certain amount of hours, and we have to clock out and take 15 or 30-minute breaks, just depending. And I was on break, and this was 2001. So I was in the back of McDonald's, and I was smoking a cigarette inside. It was still allowed, like if you were in the back in like the break room, you could smoke cigarettes back there.
Nice.
And I'm back there, and I'm talking to one of the other girls that's like on a lunch break, and I guess they got busy or something. And like AJ just comes to the break room. He's like, Jeff, if you're just gonna sit around, you can just go home. And I'm like, I'm on my break. And he's just like, no, you're not. You're fucking off, and you're doing all this. If you're gonna do that, go home. I'm like, okay. And so like I got up and I started walking out. And he was like, you need to clock out. I'm like, I'm already clocked out because I was on my fucking break. And he was like, oh, well, I'm like, no, I'm going home. And then like I went home. I came back to my next shift. He had written me up for walking out on a shift. Yeah. And so I was like, and he tried to get me alone in the office and try to get me to sign it. And I was like, you told me to go, you told me to leave. You told me to leave. And he was just like, no. And I was like, no, we're going to get another manager in here. I was like, we're going to get I think I was the 17-year-old Jeff. So it's just like full of attitude and very unfiltered. I'm like, no, we're going to get a real manager in here. I remember saying that because he like, he was a very pale person. He was like red when I said that. I'm like, no, we're gonna get a real manager. And I got Mike, the one that my mom called and yelled at. And
boy, they loved you.
And they did. I don't know if they did. So I got him involved, and I told him the whole thing. And then the girl that was in the break room like vouched for it because none of us liked this guy. So we were just like, and I just remember he was so mad. Like he was just, and I'm like, and I remember like he tried to snap at me one time. I'm like, you did it. I'm like, you brought this on yourself. I was like, I was being honest with you. I was on a break. I was actually like 5 minutes away from being back on the clock. So like, you just wanted, and I remember this was when I started using my phrase that I still say to this day when I'm talking to other men. I'm like, you just wanted to puff your chest out and prove to everyone that you're the man, and you looked like an idiot, which is like my favorite thing to say to people because I've had to say it way too many times in my life, especially working in the restaurant industry where everyone is just. Anyway, so that's my story for having a new boss.
Fun.
Back when Jeff was a little meanie, but stories about training a new manager. So when I was before I came back to the job I have now, I was a manager at a fast food place. I don't want to say the name because like, I mean, you can figure it out if you know who I am. If you know me personally, you know where I worked at before I work at the job now. So I worked at a training, I was an hourly manager.
Oh yeah.
And we were a training restaurant. So we would train managers, and I actually like really liked it. I liked training. I like training managers. I feel like I'm really good at explaining things, and I feel like I'm a very patient person, and I'm also like, people didn't feel intimidated to like come talk to me. I feel like I'm a very approachable person. I'm easy to talk to, and I'm not going to get upset if you ask me like what could be considered a dumb question or what could be considered like a pointless question. I'm a very patient person, and everyone, from what I remember, people liked working with me. So we trained so many different people, so many different types of people. Some of them I absolutely loved, and some of them I could not wait for them to leave. And the ones that I couldn't wait to leave were once again, the really young ones that like you could tell this was their only job they had ever had. And it was like I was having flashbacks with AJ every time I would work with some of these kids, where it was just like, they just like, as soon as they got the polo, it was like, oh, I'm the boss now. Like
I'm important.
So we had one, I'm not going to say his name, obviously, it was a he. I don't know if I've ever been immediately put off by someone like this quickly.
Okay.
Because he was like, I would say probably like 21 or 22 or something like that. He had been working for this place since he was like probably like 16 or 17. And the annoying thing that I had to deal with at this place was that I was what's called an external hire. I didn't start off as a crew member.
You didn't start in the trenches.
Right. I didn't start off as a crew member and then become a manager. I worked my ass off for 20 years in the restaurant industry and got a manager position at this fast food place. So I did work in the trenches, just not a oh, oops, said it.
I was like,
oh well. So there was this one person, and it was like the moment he found out that I was an external hire, it was once again just another dick measuring contest where every time I would say something, he would literally just be like, yeah, but I know more because I've worked at Cane's longer than you. And I'm like, you don't know what it's like being a manager. And I am someone that like, I always have a response. I'm never short for words. I know like a lot of people I come across as like very quiet and very like reserved, but I'm not really. I just am like that in social situations. But when I'm at work, especially if I'm like being challenged in any way for no real reason, I'm like, no, you're not gonna get the best of me. You're not some little kid is gonna get the best of me.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even though like I talked about it being a dick measuring contest, I ended up falling for it because I feel like I have to defend myself. I'm not gonna take the high road and ignore them. Like, and also this kid needs a reality check on like, you're not going to talk to my crew members like this. You can go back to your store and talk to whoever like you want to talk to them, but you're not going to do that here. And I remember my GM, there was me and another manager, another shift manager who me and him got along so well, and he was like one of my favorite people that like I've ever worked with. Phoenix, if you're listening to this in any way, I loved working with you, and I was super bummed when he left. Once he left, that was when I checked out. I was just like, I hate this place now. I was just like,
Phoenix, we miss you.
And he only wanted to work night shifts. He always gave me his day shifts, and I was always like, I get to open, and you were like always excited about it.
Yes, because I would see you at night.
So me and him really kind of took it upon ourselves. We were like, we're gonna be real with this kid. We're not just gonna let him act this way. We're not gonna let him kind of coast through managing. And so we would like, he just didn't understand what a manager was, but he would not listen to us on anything, because he knew better, because he knew everything. There were so many times where we just let him do something, and he would just, every single time, he would immediately fail. And it's not like we were doing it, we were like, haha, we got you. It was like, you don't know everything. But he would always find some excuse. He would always find some reason. And there was one time where I told the GM, I was like, look, I'm going to be, and I never said this about a trainee. I never said it before or after. I was like, I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't think this kid should be a manager. I was like, I was straight up like, and I remember Phoenix just being like, I agree. Like, he does not need to be a manager. But it's tricky when you work somewhere where it's like, he's not coming to work with us. He's, especially the fact that he was an internal promotion. It was like, he was only going to be with us for a few weeks. When it's an external, they have to do like the full crew training, all of the specialist training. Yeah, you have to do all of that. And then you start doing manager training. Like it was like 2 months of training that I had to do. And that was just for an hourly position. When your salary, it's long. It's like 3 months or something like that. So it's a lot. And I remember our GM was just like, yeah, we can't call their GM and be like, we don't want him to be a manager. He was like, it's more complicated than that, which I understood, but it was just like, I just will never forget. We had, her name was Bernice, and we all loved her. She was from, I forgot where she was from. She was from somewhere in Arkansas, and she was moving to Bossier City to become a salary manager. She was going to become an OM, but she was an external hire. And they started at around the same time, and they I remember I almost said his name. My GM introduced them to each other. I remember me and Phoenix were sitting in the office with him, and she came in and introduced herself, and the first thing this kid said was like, "Are you internal or external?" And I was just like,
I remember you telling me
I was
this.
just like, and I remember me and Phoenix just did the face, but we're like, I can't believe he's about to do this. And I remember she was like, "Oh, I'm external," and I just remember he really just said something like, "Oh, well, if you ever have any questions, you can ask me because I know more than you." And he really said this, and I was just
I believe you.
And I remember. That's funny that you remembered that, because I was just like, this kid is unreal.
I remember that story because I remember. This is a little sidebar. Sorry to interrupt you.
I need a sip.
That you're good. One of my law schools, there's the prestigious publication at every law school called the Law Review. Mm-hmm. And at some law schools, it's grade on only, where the top 15 students in the class get on. Or at some law schools, it's the top 10 get on and then 20 can write on. Yeah. It's a competition. And I'll never forget, I was at one of their orientations, and a guy was going around asking people, "Oh, did you grade on or did you write on?" And I was like, who cares?
Right.
You're both on the publication. It doesn't matter now. And so I just remember that going, oh my God, you're going to suffer in life, I hope, because you are a douchebag. So, and I remembered that your story because of that story, and remember going it doesn't matter. You're both here now. It doesn't matter. And you're not better because you were internal or not. Yeah. I just always felt like that was stupid. So sorry.
Oh no, you're good. That gave me a little break. I got to scribble a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, all right. So let's move on to something a little bit funnier, a little bit more upbeat.
What have you been writing?
You'll know. It's not, I'm not going into a novel. I'm just. I'll explain it in a second. All right. So Andy Samberg, SNL. I mean, of course, he's a legend. We also get a brief cameo from Fred Armisen in the pilot.
Oh yeah.
When they're doing the door duty, so a little SNL tribute right there. We are also in the 50th year of SNL. We watched the
big special.
It was incredible.
It was amazing.
It was incredible, and even the little documentary series that they had was really fun to watch too. You got to see all of their auditions and them talking about it, and so I mean we both love SNL. We've talked about. I don't know if we've really talked about that on here before, but we both love SNL. We're not regular watchers, but we definitely
I used to be a long
time.
Yeah,
Same.
I used to be.
Up until about, I would say, 2013, 14. That was when I kind of stopped watching.
I was about 16, 17. Yeah.
So, I mean, let's just get right into it. Who are some of your favorite SNL people?
Everyone. No.
Right.
So I obviously watched SNL early. I can remember 1975 watching SNL. Again, my mom could care less about what TV I watched, and on Saturdays we always went to mass on Saturdays, so we did not have to wake up early on Sundays, so she would let me stay up and watch Saturday Night Live. So I definitely, knew who Gilda Radner was, and Chevy Chase, and John Belushi, and Dan Aykroyd, and all of the originals. Over time, I will say my kind of college era was the Phil Hartman, David Spade, Chris Farley, Melanie Hutzel, Victoria Jackson, kind of like
Adam Sandler.
Yeah,
Chris Rock.
Yes, all of those.
That's a great era.
I mean,
yeah.
The Tri-Deltas, the Gap Girls, the
Gap
commercials.
Girls. Yeah.
So those were definitely kind of my eras
Mhm.
of watching full time.
Yeah.
Current, I mean, I still love all the, even more recent people.
Oh, yeah.
Keenan, Chris Kattan, Jimmy Fallon, Cecily Strong, Kate McKinnon. I mean, I could just, again, sit here
Right.
and list cast members until the
Yang.
end of time. Bowen, my boo, Bowen.
Heidi Gardner. Yeah.
Of course. So, I mean, some of the skits that I think that I will always take with me, I will say kind of long running ones were, I do love Jack Handy.
Deep Thoughts.
Deep Thoughts. Those were always me and my roommate Pam's kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
favorite, like little blips. I loved, it's like you asked me and I have all of the thoughts in my head, but Church Lady, I love Stefan, my Bill Hader, I love him. Always Weekend Update is always a classic. The Roxbury Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think. Wayne and Garth, of course, is a classic. Blues Brothers, kind of really just about any of them. Some skits stick with me forever. Mary Catherine Gallagher.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
The Will and Sherry O'Terry, the cheerleaders, Spartan cheerleaders. So it's like there are just so many. Obviously 50 years of sketches or whatever they call them are just, I think, a big part of pop culture. I mean, I think every generation since the 70s has their favorites.
Oh, right.
And
it's always the cast that they grew up with or they had at some point in their young life, and then they always kind of gatekeep that era, and then every other era sucks. So like it's always like people are always like SNL isn't funny anymore. I'm like, you're not watching SNL. I know for a fact you're not watching SNL because SNL is still funny.
I mean, I think my two favorite Andy Samberg sketches were the Beyonce Single Ladies.
That is still to this day one of the hardest I've ever laughed watching anything.
And to think that they really, really had to pitch it to her hard.
Oh yeah, Justin Timberlake had to come into her dressing room dressed in that outfit,
but even then she was very hesitant. They said of doing it because she was like, "What is like?" She didn't get it until she was doing it, and then it was like, "Oh, this makes sense." So to think that almost didn't exist, it
hurts my heart.
It does, and then of course. Dick in a Box.
Classic.
You can't not mention that one. So speaking of Justin Timberlake again, I mean, they are classic of, them together. But what about you? What are some of your favorites?
Okay, so I grew up, so my dad was and I think we even talked about it the last time we went to dinner with my dad, that like my dad was a huge SNL fan, and as was my mom. But like my dad, like I think he even said like he was home from school or home from college one weekend, and it was like one random Saturday night, and he just so happened to catch an episode, and then it was like that Monday or that Sunday, people were like. Then all of a sudden, people were starting to talk about SNL, and he was just like, "What is this show?" And it was like nothing he had ever seen before. And so my dad was a really big, I think up until like the John Lovitz, Phil Hartman, I think my dad was a really kind of all the way up until then. My dad loved Eddie Murphy.
Oh God, yes.
And he loved like that little era with like Mary Gross and Julie Louis-Dreyfus and that era. Billy Crystal. I don't know why I couldn't remember Billy Crystal. But yeah, so he would every time there was some type of like SNL special, or they would be like best of commercials that we've ever done, my dad would tape them. And so I grew up kind of watching SNL through the lens of like compilations.
Oh gosh, that's the best way.
And so I grew up with like Gilda Radner doing the Judy Miller Show, Wayne and Garth doing like top 10.
Rosanna, Dana.
Yeah, and then like all of these other different ones. I remember the one with I think it was when Andie MacDowell hosted, and they were doing a spoof of Beauty and the Beast, the one with Linda Hamilton, and John Lovitz was like Beast's brother that they had like set them up with, and Jan Hooks was like Belle or whatever the name was, and
yes.
And so yeah, I remember that whole episode was really funny because it's just John Lovitz in like Beast makeup, and yeah, that one was really funny. But the kind of the era that I grew up with was kind of like the end of Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, David Spade, because I was more familiar when they started being in movies in the mid 90s, and that was kind of when they were on their way out. But one of my favorite cast members still to this day, SNL cast members, is John Lovitz. I love John Lovitz. Master Thespian is like one of my favorite. It's so stupid and it's so funny, and like the pathological liar character. Ah, yes, that's the ticket. Like that whole. I love his voice. Like it just cracks me up.
Yes.
But yeah, so the real era that I grew up in was like Will Ferrell, Chris Kattan, Anna Gasteyer, Sherry O'Terry, Molly Shannon. I mean, those are just some of my favorites. I mean, I really have always been, and I know because my boo is very funny and very silly, I've always been very drawn to like really to women who are like, I want to be silly. It's like that. I think that's why I love that era so much, because like and I also like, I mean, Chris Kattan as Mr. Peepers and as Mango, those are some of the funniest things of all time. But Will Ferrell and Anna Gasteyer being that old couple that sings together, and he's like playing the keyboard.
Yes.
And that's like some of the stuff that me and my mom like were cry laughing when we would watch that. But I would say the era that is most special to me, because it was when, I think it may be the same for you when you were in college. Like it was the era where I was like, the people in the cast were like the same age as me, or in the same age range as me. It was when Andy Samberg, that's why I love him so much, Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig, Jason Sudeikis, when they all joined SNL, I was like, oh, this is like my generation's humor. And that's kind of how I felt. It kind of, SNL kind of goes through eras, and there was this, I mean, they're always political, but there are the eras where like every sketch is political, and it gets very old after a while. And yeah, it was really funny when Tina Fey was Sarah Palin, and Amy Poehler would be Hillary Clinton. Yeah, that was really funny, but it was like every skit was like a politically driven skit.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it was a lot like when Adam Sandler and all them joined SNL, and they kind of made SNL like silly and non-political, and they kind of just made nonsensical sketches again. I feel like that's what Andy Samberg and Kristen Wiig and all them did when they came on.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Because, I mean, it was just... I would say the first real thing with Andy Samberg was Lazy Sunday with him and Chris Parnell, where they're rapping about going to see Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorites. It makes me laugh so hard. But then there's this one really random Lonely Island, or Comedy Digital short with Jonah Hill, where the whole skit is Jonah Hill is dating Andy Samberg's dad. It's like one of the hardest I've ever laughed. But my all-time favorite skit, the one that still to this day makes me cry laugh, is Debbie Downer Goes to Disneyland.
Oh, that's
totally. That is Rachel Dratch is another one of my favorites. Horatio Sands, Fred Armisen, Amy Poehler, Jimmy Fallon, of course. But like, I remember that is still to this day, at least from my memory, the hardest I've ever laughed in my life. Like we always joke about when we laugh really hard, we're like, oh, I'm gonna pee. I literally was like going to pee on myself. I was laughing so hard.
Probably one of my favorite, and I will sometimes randomly pull it up because I think it's so freaking hilarious, it's when Kirstie Alley and
The restaurant. Yeah.
she goes to the restaurant. I can't remember who plays her husband in it. It's the Kevin Nealon.
Yeah.
And it's Dana Carvey is like, you want a little bit of sauce, or you want a little like carpaccio, and then they're all like, Mike Myers comes out without pants on, and like,
and you got the one Dana Carvey's like banging a woman on a table.
Yes, like turns her over.
There was this whole thing with like kind of this whole thing with like, oh, it's just their culture, like
it's their culture. They're just being sweet.
And then there was another skit where like I think it was Kirstie Alley again, and like they were like on a honeymoon or like on a getaway, and it was the same characters, but they were working at a hotel.
Yes,
yeah, and that was like really fun. It may have been another actress, but like,
well, it might have been like another time she hosted and they just revamped it or something. But I just remember like, again, laughing so hard, like, and it was just all my favorite guys all in one.
I think it was Adam Sandler that came out with no pants on.
Yes, it was Adam Sandler. I think like Mike Myers was the bartender or whatever. So I mean, just oh my god, it would just make you laugh. Makes you laugh. So even the not super funny sketches are funny.
I mean, we haven't even talked about Zillow.
Oh my god. Oh, it has a little kitchen. Oh fuck. I mean, or Domingo.
Oh yeah.
The most recent.
That has taken on a life of its own.
Oh my gosh, you've got the wedding, the baby moon, the Raval renewal. You've got Ronaldo
with Pedro Pascal. Yeah.
Yes, I mean Bad Bunny. The other brother. It just is. Every year people are like, oh my god, it's gonna end, but it doesn't. It's been going on 50 years. So
Antonio,
give
a little twist.
Maya Rudolph, another
Maya
one.
Rudolph, she's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yes. So,
all right. Let's get into this pilot summary.
Let's do it.
All right, Brooklyn Nine-Nine pilot summary. We open to Detective Jake Peralta narrating as he enters a store that has been broken into. This job has been eating me alive. I can't breathe anymore. I spent all these years trying to be the good guy, the man in the white hat. I'm not becoming like them. I am them. He is interrupted by his partner, Detective Amy Santiago. We then realize that Jake isn't narrating, but talking into one of the store's cameras that is projecting his face onto several monitors. Jake reminds Amy that he is reciting lines from Donnie Brasco, and Amy tells him to get it together and to act professional. While Amy is asking the store owner questions, Jake interrupts her by claiming he has already solved the case and that they're looking for 3 white males, one of whom has a sleeve of tattoos on both arms. Amy looks confused, so Jake tells her that he had an informant on the inside, revealing it to be a nanny cam, a teddy bear with a camera on the inside. We are then brought into the briefing room where we learn that Jake and Amy are having a competition on who is the better detective. Jake, solving the most recent case, puts him at 24 cases solved, while Santiago remains at 22, which 22 is my lucky number. So, Sergeant Terry Jeffords is leading the meeting and asks Jake about the Morgenthau? Yeah, Morgenthau murder. Earlier that day, luxury food importer Henry Morgenthau was murdered and was found by his cleaning lady. Crime techs are at the scene, but Jake will return once they are done. Terry tells Jake to stay on it, and this will be priority 1 for the new commanding officer. Detective Charles Boyle goes to the desk of Gina Linetti, a civilian administrator. Charles has a big crush on Rosa, which I totally forgot about that storyline. I totally forgot about the Charles Rosa, because they become like best friends. Right. They're like best friends by the end of the
Oh, yeah.
I just completely forgot that. And I'm glad that they went the route of them becoming best friends, because they're like one of my favorite relationships on the show. Charles has a big crush on Rosa and is going to Gina for relationship advice. Gina's brutal honesty always helps Charles, even when it's a little mean. And it's always funny because Gina will just be so mean to Charles, and Charles is just unflapped by it. He's just
like... Yes, that's what's also funny is like he doesn't really get that she's being mean to him, but he's like, thank you, or whatever.
Because when he suggests taking Rosa to a Rihanna concert, Gina tells Charles that Rosa has a type, and it's anyone but him. Charles replies that was his ex-wife's type too, which was a really unintentional, funny comeback.
Yeah.
Gina decides to be sincere and says that Rihanna is a big swing, not really Rosa's thing, and that she likes old movies. I also really love the Gina Charles relationship too, because she is kind of she does kind of like have a soft spot for him and always ends up like coming through for him and being a good friend. Jake and Amy are discussing the new captain. Amy is hoping for a mentor, but Jake just wants someone like their former captain that let them do whatever they want, like chair racing with fire extinguishers. Jake fears that the new captain will be another washed-up pencil pusher that acts more like an obedient robot. He then goes into a robot impression, and of course, Captain Holt is standing right behind him. Holt insists he continue his impression, to which Holt tells him that he's doing a terrible robot impression, and the next time he sees Jake, he better be wearing a necktie. So this becomes a whole theme throughout the whole episode, Jake having Holt wanting a certain type of dress code, and Jake just rebelling against it. Holt briefly introduces himself, and when Amy asks for a speech, he says that was a speech. just one of the first of many unintentional Holt zingers. Yeah. They're zingers, but they're Holt zingers. They're different. We are led to believe that Holt is a straight shooter and doesn't waste his time. Terry meets Holt in his office, and we learn that they worked together in the past when Jeffords was overweight and had issues with his body image. They called him Terry Titties. They said that in the episode.
Aww.
I know. Holt recently learned that Terry had been... Yeah, I'm at the right place. Holt recently learned that Terry has been on administrative leave, and when he asked Terry why, Terry informs him that his wife recently had twin girls, Cagney and Lacey, which is
cute.
the cutest ever. His girls are really cute. And since then, he has been scared of getting hurt, which they flash back to a really funny scene where he gets scared and he ends up shooting a mannequin.
Yeah.
And then Jake's just like, I think he's dead. Holt then asks Terry for a rundown on the squad. So Terry gives him the rundown, introduces and this is a great way to kind of introduce the characters. This was a really smart way to do that. So first he says Scully and Hitchcock. They're worthless, but they make great coffee. Rosa Diaz, tough, smart, hard to read, and really scary. Charles Boyle, not the most brilliant detective and not the most physically gifted, but is a grinder and is the hardest worker in the precinct. Amy Santiago, brilliant, but is always trying to prove how tough she is. And finally, Jake Peralta, the 9-9's best detective, brilliant, loves putting away bad guys, loves solving puzzles, but the only puzzle is I ruined the joke. The only puzzle is he hasn't solved is how to grow up. Holt tells Terry that the precinct is doing fine, but he wants the 9-9 to be the best, and they need to start with Jake. Jake, Amy, Charles, and Rosa are at the Morgenthau murder scene. Jake jokes about Holt making him wear a tie, so of course Holt shows up behind Jake right as he's making these jokes. Jake continues to make a bad impression with his new boss, which is another theme that happens throughout the episode. Charles asks Rosa out to an old movie festival, to which Rosa accepts, and tells Charles to pick a movie for them. Back at the precinct, Holt asks Gina about the competition between Jake and Amy. Gina informs him that whoever has the most arrests within a certain amount of time wins. If Amy wins, she gets Jake's Mustang. If Jake wins, Amy has to go out on a date with him. And so then we then find out, we're kind of like, why Jake is asking Amy out on this, like why that's his end of the deal. We find out that Jake's intention is to be the worst date of all time. Like as this competition continues throughout the first season, you kind of find out that like Jake's like, oh no, I'm gonna be wearing board shorts, or like I'm gonna be wearing a sports jacket and board shorts, or I'm gonna pick you up in a rental car or something like that. Jake and Amy go on door duty in Morgenthau's apartment building to see if any of his neighbors saw or heard anything. It proves to be no help, although we get a funny cameo from Fred Armisen. At Morgenthau's apartment, Charles notices that the intruder didn't steal an expensive TV, but stole a piece of ham out of the fridge that's worth a lot of money. Jake and Charles go to a butcher shop where Charles, being an avid foodie, which is another funny gag that Charles has throughout the show, he's eating like the weirdest foods ever. He knows they sell the specific type of ham. Charles reminds Jake that they need a brief hold on the situation before they question anyone, but Jake doesn't listen. They talk to the owner, Ratko, who after some questions tries to flee the scene. Ratko ends up getting away, so now Jake is in trouble. Jake is now exiled to the records room as punishment for not briefing Holt. Jake is less than thrilled, but Terry comments that he'd give anything to be sent to the records room as far away from the action as possible. Jake vents to Terry that Holt is being unfair and is dumb for punishing the precinct's best detective. Terry defends Holt and tells Jake that Holt has forgotten more about being a detective than he will ever know. Through a flashback, we learn that Holt was the cop who caught the infamous Disco Strangler. Jake is impressed and realizes he was wrong about Holt. Rosa seems excited. I mean, as excited as she can look. She's just as deadpan. She's just as deadpan as Holt most of the time. But she seems excited about her movie date with Charles. She asks him what movie he picked, and he said all of them. Charles admits he was nervous about picking the wrong movie, so he got 2 tickets to every movie instead. But instead of saying that, he says that he didn't want to mess up because she is so opinionated. This immediately angers Rosa, and she breaks off the date with Charles. I know, Anna's making sad face.
I know.
You hate it when people are mean to Charles.
I do.
Holt walks into the records room where Jake is sitting at the desk, wearing a tie, and says that he did a little digging and found out that Ratko was a fake name, but he found several references to a Serbian thug called the Rat or the Butcher. He also found out that Ratko hides out in a storage unit near Boren Park, which there was something with the footprints from the soil that's used in that park that they tracked in the apartment. So that kind of connected him. Holt tells Jake good job, and Jake stands up to give Holt a fist bump, but in true Jake fashion, he is wearing a tie, but he is not wearing pants as a joke. Holt doesn't flinch and calls in the rest of the squad to congratulate Jake, aka laugh at him for being in his underwear. The squad goes to the storage unit and do a good old-fashioned stakeout, waiting to see if Ratko shows up. While waiting, Jake, Amy, and Holt are in a car together, and Jake decides to open up to Holt and tells him that Terry told him about the Disco Strangler and how impressive that is. Jake then asks Holt why it took so long for him to get his first command, and Holt tells him it's because he's gay. Staking out in another car, Rosa offers to pay Charles back for the movie tickets. He uses it as an opportunity to ask her out again, to which she declines. But she tells him that she enjoys his company because he's sweet. Back in the other car, Holt tells Amy and Jake about coming out to the NYPD. He made captain quickly, but he was put in public affairs to help with recruitment, but all he wanted was his own command, and he's not doing anything to screw it up. Jake realizes he was a jerk and apologizes to Holt. Just then, they spot Ratko going into a storage unit. The squad splits up and looks for Ratko. Jake notices the only unit unlocked on the outside and finds Ratko. Ratko attempts to escape, but Jake shows him that he's surrounded by his team. Just then, Jake realizes what the tie represents. Holt insists that this isn't the best time, but Jake persists. Jake realizes that they're a team, and the tie is part of the team's uniform. They arrest Ratko and have solved the case. End of episode.
End of episode.
I love this show so much. I love this
know.
show so much.
It's so good. It's just good.
It is such a feel-good show. It is a comfort show. It is a show you can put on in the background and just listen to.
Oh, yeah.
It is just, I can't say enough good things about this show. I love it so much. You love it so much. So yeah, I think we did a good job here.
Oh yeah.
I think we talked a lot. Some stuff I'm probably gonna have to cut out because I revealed way too much about where I worked at. All right, that wraps up this episode of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. Thanks for tuning in, and if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can follow us on Instagram at We Judge Pilot Pod. We're also on Facebook. You can leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. Which ones you got?
Okay, I have a few. The Cops, male and female. Statue of Liberty for New York.
Nice.
The Desk, a gun. I think there is a bridge, so that can represent the Brooklyn Bridge.
Brooklyn Bridge, yeah.
The TVs, the teddy bear, like the camera, the movie camera, the face palm emoji because of your story. About like just the robot, the necktie, the coffee cup, a rose for Rosa.
Oh.
The puzzle piece, the car, the ham, the disco ball, and finally the cheese to represent Cheddar, even though he's not in the episode.
Little fluffy butt.
Oh my God, he's so cute. All right, well, we are going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.